this together, great event. I work with the National Wildlife Federation in Boulder and have for about the past couple of years. Just moved to the state from Montana, where I was for 12 years. Before that, about 2 summers ago. So still getting the hang of this state, but most people who don't recognize National Wildlife Federation do recognize Ranger Rick. He's our mascot, and a lot of what we do is about getting kids outdoors and into nature, and what you were talking about there. So, my personal connection to this issue, I've worked in the environmental community for almost 20 years now, and I actually, when I first moved back to Montana from the East Coast in 1999, I lived on an island in the middle of the Yellowstone River, and shortly after I moved down here, actually 2 weeks after, I got sent back up to Montana to go document what was happening with this Exxon oil spill on the Yellowstone River. And in July of 2011, 50,000 gallons of oil were sent down the longest undammed river in the United States. And this was the result. It was not pretty to see, but you know, when you're standing in the middle of a verdant riparian area along a beautiful river, and you can smell and taste and hear, you know, the impacts and damages that happened, it's kind of makes you wonder, you know, when we're going to start changing away from fossil fuels and looking towards a cleaner energy future. I actually had the opportunity to go to Chicago last month to hear Al Gore, along with Carrie, who's in the audience as well, give his presentation on climate and teach us how to go out into communities and tell people about what we're seeing. He has over 300 slides in this presentation. It's an amazing presentation. But there was only a few of wildlife, and this was one of them. This was Victoria fires in Australia. Sorry, I'm going to go over just a minute. And it's obviously, you know, you don't have to go all the way around the world to see impacts to wildlife. They're happening right here, right now. This is 2000 in the Bitterroot in Montana. Some elk seeking refuge in a river from a devastating fires that we had that year in the state. And we have a report coming out in the coming months to talk about big game and how they're going to be affected by climate change. We recently released a report about migratory birds. And right here, this is a sage-grouse from Walden, Colorado. And they're actually headed towards the endangered species list in all likelihood because of energy exploration on public lands and loss of habitat. This is a wolverine named, M56. He was collared up near Grand Teton National Park in northwest Wyoming. Traveled over 600 miles down to Rocky Mountain National Park, where he's photographed here in 2009, and he was the state's first wolverine that was documented in the state since 1919, which is pretty amazing. These guys are also headed towards the endangered species list because of climate change. They need big snowpacks and high mountains to raise their young and to have their kids. And so it's just kind of an interesting story. This is another report that we talked about wildlife in a warming world across the United States and what's happening to our wildlife populations. And just today I talked to this fisheries biologist from New Mexico. This is a silvery minnow, been on the endangered species list since 1994. And him and 5 crew members use ATVs to go up and down the dry Rio Grande and search puddles all day long to pick out fish that are about that big, you can see, out of these little dry pools that are drying up, and take them upriver to where they can actually get back into their habitat with flowing water. And he's going to speak next week. We're releasing a report about freshwater fish in a warming world. So, but I always want to end on a good note. This was another thing we saw in Chicago. When 10% of a population holds an unshakable belief, their belief will always be adopted by the majority of society. And that's a scientific paper that was released a couple years ago, and pretty cool. So get out there and get that 10% moving on this issue with that unshakable belief. The oil and gas industry and all the fossil fuel people don't want to see that happen, but that's our job to